Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I'm here with three amazing guests here today to answer this question. Name one leadership skill every emerging leader will have to master if they want to build teams that don't just survive, but thrive. So, first of all, I want to take a minute to introduce this all-star lineup of powerhouse women, beginning with ROSANNA Simone. She's the founder and heart behind Verv HR, a modern HR consultancy partnering with startups. SANDI SLOUGH, founder and president of Simply Spoken Coaching. And then last but not least, Lisa helps organizations unlock their full potential by aligning strategy, structure, and human capability. All right, ladies, I am excited to hear these answers. And ROSANNA, you drew the short end of the stick, so we're going to start with you. And that question again, name one leadership skill you believe every emerging leader should have to master if they want to build teams that don't just survive, but thrive.
To me, leadership isn't just titles, it's about trust. So, one skill that every emerging leader must master if they want to build teams that don't just survive, but thrive is building real, authentic relationships. So, a lot of people may brush that off as, the soft stuff, but in my experience over a decade in global HR, it is one of the strongest foundations that a team can stand on. So as a leader, you can have the best strategy in the world, you could be the most innovative, but if your people don't feel seen, if they don't feel heard or valued, that strategy is only going to take you so far. So one thing that I always tell my leaders when I'm coaching them is you need to know your people to lead your people, right? And that's just EQ in action. Because everybody has their own communication style and how they like to be spoken to. So sometimes you need to tweak accordingly, right? Because when people feel psychologically safe, right? When they know that they're being supported, that they can speak up without being judged, they can be heard, and they can be treated just like humans, right? That's when they bring their best selves to the table, and that's when they're going to want to work for you as their leader. So I learned this lesson early on in my career. There was a leader that I was supporting, super sharp, super strategic, very technically sound. But behind the scenes, when it came to people management, they weren't always the best, right? So we noticed that the team was starting to feel burnt out, disengaged. We started to see an uptick in turnover on the team. So after diving in a little bit more, we realized that it wasn't necessarily the work that was causing them to burn out, but it was the disconnect because that team was just a culture of work, work, work. It was kind of like robotic, right? There was no real conversations, no real trust, right? And what comes with trust concurrently is also respect. So, people just felt like they were another line item. So once that leader started leaning in a little bit more towards relationship building, things started to change. Get to know your people outside. What do they like to do outside of work, right? What motivates them? What drives their ambition? What are their goals, their career goals? So just, pick up the phone and check in on your people.
Like
Another
you
thing.
said, treat them like they're human, right? I
Yes,
think I
absolutely.
think
That it
that's
just
awesome.
it's so
Let,
foundational.
yeah, it is.
So
It sounds so simple. Let's jump over to Sandy.
sure.
So much gold, I think, in what you kicked us off with. Sandy, what would you add to that from your perspective and all the experience that you've had, probably working with emerging leaders and just seeing what is it that makes the difference between surviving and thriving?
Wow, thank you, ROSANNA, because honestly, I'm going to tap into that just a little bit. We need to learn as emerging leaders how to empower people as opposed to enable them. And so that sounds like, oh, okay, I can do that. That's pretty easy. But the real question is, or the real way to build that skill is it starts with a mindset. First of all, it starts with that examination of, are you a problem solver or are you solution minded? And while they sound like the same, they're really different, because problem solvers are looking for problems, and they go around the building and they look for everything that's wrong so they can fix it. Solution minded people are there and they're collaborators, but they're not looking for what's wrong. Then the second part of that examination is, do I really believe that my people are able to solve their own problems and that their solutions would work better for them than my solutions would? Because if the answer to that is no, then you're probably going to enable people versus empower them. Then you want to survey yourself. You want to say, well, when people come to me, what do they usually come for? Are they looking for a quick fix? Are they looking to complain? Are they coming because they want to have a collaborative conversation with you? And if they are, then you're already there. You're already an empowerer if they're coming to collaborate with you. If they're looking for a quick fix, you might be an enabler, because if they're looking to you to solve their problems, if they believe in you, leader, it'll always work for them. But if they don't believe in you, it won't work. And then it begins to tank your environment, right? And so there's a couple of myths. You need to be a great myth buster as a leader, as an emerging leader. And one of the myths that you need to bust is, well, they really don't know what to do. Well, if that's really true, then you need to explore that curiously, and you need to find the right training and the right support to help them know what to do. But most of the time, that's not really true. They do know what to do. They just are looking for your validation. And the next myth is, it takes too long. And the truth is, when building relationship, slow is fast and fast is slow. So slow down, leader, and make sure that you are creating a collaborative environment, because you're going to have better solutions. You're going to have increased ownership in the mission of whatever your company is. You're going to have sustainable results, and you're going to have a healthier environment.
I love it. Hurry up and slow down when building relationships. Good stuff. Good stuff. Lisa, what would you add to this conversation?
Wow, what a strong start. Finishing last, I've got it. You know, Kyle, I'll say honestly, when I looked at the question, I thought, this is great. I could talk about this all day. And then I realized I had to peel it down to one thing, and it became very difficult. So I chose to talk about giving and receiving feedback. So one of the things that we know early in your career, especially in an emerging leader role, giving feedback is new. And doing that in a way that is effective, that builds your team up, that helps them see potential, that helps them learn from experience, is really critical. And so I think leaders' ability to not only help their team members know where they're engaging in ways that are having negative impact, they also need to reinforce behaviors that are having positive impact, either positive impact on their team members or positive impact on the outcomes that the team are trying to achieve, or organizationally having impact. And so that starts with, in my opinion, starting with really behaviorally based feedback. So looking at what people are saying or doing versus evaluative feedback, where I'm evaluating what they did. You were aggressive, you were dismissive, you were helpful. What does that look like, so that they can actually repeat what they're doing right? They are very specifically know what they're doing right, or they can avoid certain behaviors that might be getting in the way of success. I'll give you an example. I'm sure all of us have presented in a meeting, and as the meeting is ending, senior leaders or other members of the team have come, that was a great job. You did so well. Thank you. That was very helpful. But you leave and you don't really know what to replicate from that situation. So behaviorally anchored feedback says, you provided a high level vision up front, and then you went through each detail, and you didn't have too much information on the slides, and you provided plenty of opportunity for us to ask questions. That's a categorically different kind of feedback than just giving the, you were great, or that was wrong, do that differently. So I think behavioral based feedback is going to be really important for emerging leaders.
I love that. And it's amazing what just a small level of specificity can do in a conversation, right? When you think about feedback, especially. And it's interesting and ironic, because this question really had nothing to do with the fact that I had been all week working with emerging leaders. I'm seriously, it did. I think we picked this question, I don't know when, but anyway, And it's interesting when you think about kind of that being sandwiched between direct reports a lot of times and managing up to some extent, and some of the hesitation that comes with that. And so much of what you guys, I think all three of you touched on, I think is great input for managing in both directions, right? It's learning to give feedback up. Oh, wait a minute, I have to do that too? No, you don't have to, but think about how that builds a relationship. And if you become accustomed to doing that slowly and consistently, how that starts to form a different kind of a bridge.
That's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.